Hi, I'm Victoria Wieck, co-founder of Victoria Wieck Jewelry, and you're listening to EA Interviews.
EA Interviews, episode 528.
Inspiration, transformation, success stories, and the imperfect action round. 7 days a week. Join Mario Ficini for today's Expert Authority Effect interview.
How would you like to do $1,000 in sales, $1 million in sales, $10 million in sales? How would you like to hear from someone who's done over $500 million sales and turning your idea into $1 million business? Victoria Wieck is a true rags to riches story. Having immigrated from Korea with only $30 in her pocket, she has a very successful jewelry line that you've probably seen on ShopHQ, QVC, and probably bought it. And I know when I'm searching for her new book on Amazon, the jewelry comes up just as much as the book does. But I'm super excited to have none other than Victoria Wieck on today's episode to share with you what she did to go from rags to riches and just take the world by storm, because there's very few entrepreneurs that can say they've accomplished any level of turning things around to even a small level, and she's done it to a big level. And the heart she has and the people she's helped along the way, I'm very excited to bring my friend Victoria Wieck on. She'll be right here, right after we thank the sponsor. Every business needs a book, including yours. And that's why I'm launching my new book to help you regardless of where you think your current writing abilities are. Visit eapublishingmethodbook.com today to learn the 7 steps to publish and promote your nonfiction lead and profit-generating business book in 8 weeks. Once again, that's eapublishingmethodbook.com. Here she is, ladies and gentlemen, the lovely Victoria Wieck. Victoria, how are you feeling today?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for inviting me to on your show. It's one of the few shows I listen to very regularly, as you know. And I learn a lot every day from all your guests. You do an amazing job, and I'm excited to be here.
You're too kind. I do appreciate it, but I'm excited to showcase you. I've always wanted to, and I'm glad we're making it happen now. And congratulations on your new book. How does it feel to have it out there now?
You know, we talked about publishing, and I know that's your expertise, and I know you do really, amazing job at it.
Thank you.
I had no idea how much it actually takes to, create a book, put your heart and soul into this thing for years and years and years, and, everything, and
yeah, most people really don't, even if they have the
I know.
desire.
I had no clue. I mean, you warned me and I had no clue. But once I did it, though, I am so glad I did it, because I do feel like it's out there to help people who want to be helped. And, one thing I will also tell you about this book is that I wanted to make sure that the book that I wrote isn't like a memoir. It's more a true how-to and information that you would not ever get by Google searching or attending someone's masterclass. Every single thing is original. I've actually done it, felt the failures, when I didn't accomplish something, and figured out how to do it. And then I'm just transferring everything that I know so that, I can't say that everybody's going to be a millionaire, but some of them could be billionaires, and some of them maybe won't, quite get there yet, but it'll still be better. You're going to be richer in personal life as well as your professional life. And that, I feel, is something worth going through all that trouble for, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember you sharing with me even years ago, like, I want to do this. And hey, absolutely. And what I want everyone to know is your credibility with how you're saying, there's so many, like I was saying, there's so many people that go, I can help you, but you've actually done it for what, 30 plus years now?
35 years.
35. I was going to say that. that. And you didn't start off with a silver spoon, did you?
Oh my gosh.
$30, right?
I told you just before we got on the show that I spent some time with my mom this weekend. And, it's interesting. My parents came here with 5 kids with $30 to their name, with a family of 7. And you can't even imagine the hardship that they went through. I mean, I remember my dad coming home, like in Korea at that time, we didn't have oranges. It's a different kind of a climate. And we came and we all wanted to taste the oranges. And, he just bought one single orange and cut it in like, 8 sections. And my youngest child got two, and then each person got one slice. That's how like dire we were. And I've had grown men cry over my background because, I was just, 12 years old. I mean, having to help my parents raise the other children. They were all younger than me, so that my parents can go to work, 2 jobs at a time. So from that background to, my dream really was just to kind of sustain myself. It wasn't to be a millionaire. It wasn't to strike it rich. It just was to sustain myself, have an apartment that I can pay for on my own, maybe have a used car. Like that was my American dream. So from that humble background, um, anything over that was just,
A
to me,
bonus, so to speak.
yeah, it's an overkill. And, and I also wanted to be sure that I never lost sight of that, meaning that, I could have kept on going and said, I want to be a billionaire, or, I want to be the next whatever. But as you know, for me, family, friends,
Yeah.
your integrity, customers, your reputation, these things are worth more to me than money, because
Agree. I know we've spoke many times about just family and the holidays and just doing stuff to
yes,
that. And I think that's one of the most impressive things is you've been able to, there's people, hey, I don't want to downplay anyone who's got a 6-figure business or 7-figure anything, but very few can say 8 and 9 in sales and at what cost. It's impressive you've been able to maintain the family side of it too. I hesitate to say balance because I think we both know it's never perfectly balanced, but how do you maintain it? Because I know people struggling they wish they had the success, but they can't maintain it at any level. And then the other people I'm thinking of, it's like they have not your success, but some level, and they don't have it either. So how did you pull off both?
It's really interesting. I don't think you've heard this before.
Oh, good.
And
Tell
we've
me
had
something I
many,
don't
many
know.
conversations. Right. We've had many, many conversations, but I don't think you've heard this before. So when I came here, I went to school. I've been working full time since I was 15 years old. I wouldn't have transportation, so I actually took city buses. Like I had to transfer 3 different buses in LA. Trust me, that's not easy. Hours and hours of waiting. And I think I made like $2.10 or something, per hour. So from there, I decided I really had to go get an education. So I did that. I learned to speak English. I, got a full scholarship at UCLA, and then on to USC, got my master's, all that stuff. And when I was working, I realized I'm working in exchange for some kind of a money and maybe a salary,
Trading
which
hours
was
for
much better.
dollars.
Yeah, much better than so many hours. But I mean, I was getting paid very good salary. But every time I got a promotion, I was working more and more hours. So I would never see my kids. And they'd be like shipped off to a nanny or something. So I decided that I needed to be the mother that my mom couldn't be a mother to me the minute we got here. So, it's not like, as you know, I'm not saying anything bad about my mom. I'd care about my mother more than anything. So I decided that I can't do that to my children because I had the option, like my parents had to put food on the table. I didn't
Hmm.
have that. I could put food on the table. I just couldn't buy luxury cars or houses. So I decided I'm going to be a mother. So I quit my job and it was up to me to figure it out. So, when I started working, like I thought I could do it, but then I realized I really couldn't. I couldn't, basically when I sent letters to, Neiman Marcus and whoever, it's 9 to 5. My kids are with me 9 to 5. So I realized that, but then, coming from Korea, I'm having to call my aunt and everybody, in that time zone. I thought, you know what? Someplace in the world at 6 o'clock in the morning, it's like 9 o'clock in the morning for them.
Right.
Like, I
Different
mean,
time
so
zones. Love it.
different time zones. So I ended up, getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning. And that was, pretty early in the morning, about 10, 11 o'clock ish
And that's
for
California time?
California time. It's about, someplace in Europe, it's about anywhere from like 10 to noon,
Yeah,
England,
and
France,
it would be 8
Holland, all
o'clock
that.
stateside here on the East Coast.
So, but I was up, pretty early and I would, I basically wrote letters to them and I used to fax them. You remember we used to have a real fax machine
I remember those.
because when you call somebody on the phone, back those days, back in 1989, it was like $3, $4 a minute to call someone. This is before cell phone days. But if you sent the fax, it's only like 6 seconds that the page goes through. So I contacted, everybody I knew, like pretty much. I got uh, I went downstairs to the travel agency downstairs and got their, basically borrowed their book and figured out basically contact fax phone numbers to Harrods London, Galleries Lafayette, all the famous stores. I just sent them. I got, I had a lot of time on my hands. And it turns out my designs were really well received. They were kind of just hand drawn. And so I opened, I opened all these stores in Europe. And the quantities were really small, but because, and then uh, 5 o'clock in the afternoon was 9 o'clock in the morning the next day in Asia, in Tokyo, Korea, all these places. So I had my production people down there. So I worked that 5 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock in the morning, and then 5 p.m. to midnight, basically, so I could be with my kids during the day. So I worked. It wasn't easy. I worked really hard because
But you still made it work. Same 24 hours everyone has.
and you know what? Once I did that, and I was in all these famous stores, buyers from Neiman Marcus and all these places in Lloyd's, Lord and Taylor, yeah, they actually called me and said, hey, I'm going to see you. Like I was okay. So I actually had a global business before. I mean, before I even figured
Before
out
the internet, it sounds like.
before the internet, I didn't even know what a global business was, really. I wasn't looking
So
for it.
where did that
But
innate sensibility come in to just it sounds like common sense and it sounds great to me because I've done the same thing with time zones. I was like, hey, when business closes here in Eastern, Central, Mountain, Pacific, Hawaii, 6 hours difference. Like if
right,
you want to be ambitious and go nuts,
right,
somewhere's
right.
always open. But where did it come
Exactly.
from for you to go, I'm going to attack all of these at once
Well,
instead of
it was,
just going, well, I want to stay in my local store? Because I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs, they get over I'm going to start a business and maybe leave my career regardless of if it's a lot of money or little. They go into
right.
business, but then they still play it safe. Like, well, take me. I went to the local businesses just because I could walk in there. I did not
You know,
think, well, I can call 6 hours ahead and attack London and all these places.
yeah,
You
I
just
think,
figured it
yeah,
out and went for it.
no, I didn't figure it out. I think that my background of, being the immigrant that really didn't have options. I didn't have, parents to lean on. In fact, I supported my parents since I was 15 years old. Parents to lean on. I didn't have a loan I can go get. I didn't have a community that's going to give me anything. So I had to kind of do things on my own. And I think that believing that I believed when things were really rough, um, that I wasn't born, on this earth so I can just starve and spin my wheels and just die. I felt that, as long as I gave it my best, tried my heart, there was hope and it's going to happen someday. And so I kept looking, there's got to be something somewhere out there. And so I contacted all the domestic people first. And, I got very low response. I would send 50 letters a day, every day. In those days I used to do the IBM typewriter, IBM
Yeah.
select ball. And I would carefully select them, and I did that. And part of this is in my book talking about goal setting. So you could go crazy, right? So, but what I did was I thought, okay, I looked at the direct response rates. It was like you get like I don't know 2 to 3% response rate, and then only about 10% of those people. Most of the people, if they respond, it's like no, I'm not interested. And so, so your actual response of turning anybody into a sale is like less than 1%. But I thought, well, if I'm only just trying to pay rent for $1,200 a month or whatever for 3 bedroom or something, and I sent 50 letters a day every day for 30 days, 30 days a month, and I got one of those people to buy like four things, um, that's almost halfway there, based on my price point. So, and I didn't want to, because for me it's like a steady, something I can handle. So I basically
Yeah,
went
and
down.
that's a good point because I think too many people don't do enough, or they jump in and try to do too much too quick.
Right. And then you burn out or you're just going through the numbers game. But what I did was if I said I'm going to do 50 letters a day, I went to the travel agency downstairs and there was a like they used to have travel agents that actually helped you, on vacations and stuff.
It wasn't an
So I got,
Expedia ad.
no, I didn't have any. So I had to, I would borrow it. I would go down there, tell them I'll answer the phone for you and everything. But I just want to use your book. Is it okay? And so I got all the gift shops, all the places. And I mean, I got some responses here. And there's a lot of things in the book that I can't, obviously we don't have unlimited time here, but just like the time zone thing, once you figure out the time zone, then what do you say, right? What do you say on that fax that's going to be in six? How do you catch their attention?
Absolutely.
Um, to
Because you could fax or email or text or
yeah,
whatever the
but you still
medium
got to
is.
get the attention, right? You
Yeah,
still got to get
10,000 people isn't as good as 100 focused with a good message.
right. So
How'd you come up with the script?
I carefully jotted down what I kind of really carefully vetted who I was contacting. Even 6 seconds to me was a lot of money. So I carefully, jotted down like what they sold currently, what their price points were. I get all this newspaper ads about you get articles. Like LA Times would have articles about, different department store trends or that Harrods is, going after a certain kind of customer or whatever. I would use it. I would say, hey, your new collection of, whatever looks really great. And, I admire them. But and my current I designed a few pieces that might complement because I'm not asking them to get rid of their current, because I'm assuming they have a pretty good relationship with whoever they were doing business with. This might be something that same customer might be interested in that you don't currently carry. Stuff like that. So you do
So
your
what I'm
homework,
hearing is you were always respectful and aware of what
right?
was
You
going on to
always
begin
need
with.
to start with a compliment and a meaningful compliment that they understand that you've done the homework. They always appreciate anybody who understands your plight. So you start with that. And the other thing I found too is the US buyers, rarely they would actually, get back to you. Rarely. The British buyers always would get back to you, even if it's no. I'd fax them and they would say something like, thank you so much for writing to me, but, we're not interested. I'd get a rejection letter. And that to me, so when you get rejections, this is the second lesson in the book, which is when you get rejected, that's great because so I would that is when I would actually pick up the phone and
Yeah.
call them and say, hey, thank you so much for writing this rejection letter. It's the kindest, most polite and sophisticated rejection letter I've ever received in my life. And since you took the time to review my product and rejected it, and, as I told you in my earlier fax to you, how much I admire your collection and your customer base and how much I want to be, in your store. What would it take? Is there anything here that has any hope or future here? And sometimes that they hadn't looked at it really because
Hmm.
they'll say, oh, let me take a look. And you can hear them shuffling. Or they'll say, they look good, but I thought it'd be too expensive, or they look good, but too small. But they give you feedback, and they'll say. So I would say what I'm hearing is that if I did that in a smaller version of it, and it was not as really expensive as you thought, that you would use me as an opening. You would be willing to test me as an opening price point. And they're like, yes, or something like that. So then I would have a relationship. It was a lot easier to deal with that. Once you got the rejection, it was a lot easier to deal with it.
It wasn't a
If that,
rejection as much as an opportunity to, at the very least, learn. But
right.
you're so smooth with. So what I'm hearing is if I do this, then you would take me. Assume the sale.
Right. And you know what? I told you earlier that I got scholarships at both UCLA and USC. And I did the same thing when I was in school. I would, whenever, I'd get like, how when you get a grade, you get a test, the second test, you get an essay, whatever, you get a midterm. So when I first get my test, I would, there's classes like I did philosophy, it's all essays. And, I got like a C plus or something in that first. And I would go make an appointment with the professor. And I said, like, what is it? Like, you didn't like my grammar, you didn't like my thought process or whatever. What would it take? What are the A students getting? Right? Like, I
Yeah.
want to be that. And they'll tell you, well, you missed on this, you missed it. So if you're telling me that if I focused on this portion of it, so next time you're doing a lecture, I really should be focused on this. And they're like, yes, well, next time they actually look at your grade differently. They'll go, oh, that's the girl that came over. So let me take a look at it because I gave her some points and, I don't
And
want to
now
just
she's
like
following up on it.
be right. So, so I think that, if you, so, I basically even complimented her on the rejection letter. So I think that, there's just a lot of, like I said, these are the kind of stuff that you'll never get in Google search, right? How to,
The intangibles, yeah, for sure.
yeah,
Because most of
intangibles.
that is the generic outline, like, oh, you want $1 million company? Well, get an idea, incorporate the business, get some legal structure, go sell it. Like,
Yeah.
obviously,
Or, do some direct mail and you're going to get somebody to get on the phone and buy
yeah.
everything. It's never happened to me that way, ever.
I've actually Googled how to publish a book, and it's interesting that all of them are pretty much the same 12 bullet points. And it's like, okay, but what's the context for every single one? Because each step is about 30 hours of work.
Yeah, and it's all like regurgitated information that is spun differently. Or, the other thing is that I wrote this book, $1 Million Passion, and I was talking about, how to start a business, how to scale it. We're going to talk about scaling in a minute. Um, and when I looked, so my publisher had asked me to do a comparable, book study, right? So what books are out there? What am I competing with? And you know what? I Googled it and on Amazon, and I found that the top 10 selling books on how to start a business and how to scale it are done by professors or people who are on the internet. Like none of them actually had a business. And I'm like, how is this possible? Like you've never actually wrote a paycheck on, how to actually make a sale to either a
Professor of
store,
economics.
a professor of entrepreneurship or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can teach all day long. I can come up with theories all day long. But in reality in life is totally different. I mean, theory would be like, oh yeah, if you call, you know, um, 10,000 buyers. Okay, who has time to do that, by the way? You're gonna get, I don't know, 1,000 people to it doesn't when they respond with all the rejections, like what are you supposed to do with that? Right? Um, so there's tips on how to once you get that far and they say, I wanna, you know, um, try you or test you, you then have to understand your business terms, who takes the risk, what are you have to understand what their margin requirements are. If they say they won't tell you this, I mean, buyers don't tell you this because to them it's normal. So if you say, well, this is $100 or something, Harrods London would take it $100 item and they'll sell it for $1,000, $1,200. Neiman Marcus here would probably sell it for about $800. An HSN would sell it for like 250. So but then, somebody there, like I used to sell duty free stores. I used to sell on the airline, in flight duty free. I sold all the cruise ship, cruise lines. They all have different requirements, margin requirements, return privileges. They all also have packaging requirements that are different because that all costs you. Like whatever, if you have to package it in a certain way, it's all cost. You have to come up with new packaging that fits them. And then you have to also understand that every business has something that's really valuable for them. For example, like Harrods London what's valuable to them is the glass space, right? Because they
Yeah,
only have limited.
the sales real estate.
Yeah, everybody in the world wants to sell them, so they're limited by how much space they have for the jewelry counters, right? Um, on in-flight airlines, it's weight because the fuel costs money. So like liquor companies, they weigh a ton versus jewelry, which is like nothing, right? And it's weight and space. So jewelry is like an ideal thing. In cruise ships, they've got the same problem, which is space and also the inability for them to actually do real time sales analysis because you could be out for a week, you could be out for 25 days, depending on
Yeah.
the length. So you can't restock. So it's all these things. So you as the vendor supplier brand, the minute you understand what their margin requirements are, how they package,
And the distribution channel, it sounds like.
Yeah, so all of these, it's the more, like I said, I've had to learn it on my own. If you, as a starting business, I mean, you may be like, okay, I want to start a gardening business. I got gardening tools that's going to make everything grow. Okay, for you to learn all these requirements from all these different places, it'll probably take you 10 years because no one's going to tell you that. Like you can't Google search and say, what are the margin requirements of gardening tools for Macy's, for example. Okay, there's not,
Yeah, it might not even be public knowledge.
it's not public knowledge. And it might not even be some, they won't never publish it. No company will publish that. There's only somebody who's ever dealt with them would know that, And a lot of times they'll say my margin is, like, for example, department stores will tell you our margin is 60%, 55%, 60%. Well, it's not true because even though their gross margin could be 55, 60%, they'll say, but we also need graphics fee, internet fee, we need, promotional fee. Well, what are those fees? Because those fees could add up to another 20% by themselves.
Absolutely.
So their margin is actually not 55% or 60%. It could be 80%. So, it depends on, I've dealt with all the different TV networks around the world. And as an industry, they are, a certain level, but every company has their different, like one company might want to
So you're saying there's some subtle nuances between them all?
dig. So I think that's why I published my book, because you you have to be aware before you quote a price. If somebody says, okay, well, I want to buy this necklace, and that ring or whatever, and you have a price and based on your cost, you might go out of business a lot sooner than you thought because
Yeah, if they don't disclose those fees and you don't ask, you don't want to take a 20% haircut just because you assumed it was here and they made it sound like it was less than it's going to be.
well, also when you read the purchase order, a lot of times those purchase orders as big as a phone book because of all the terms on the back, the fine print. They'll say, we'll give you X amount. And then on the back side of the purchase order, it might say, we have a graphics fee, we have, promotional ad fee, we got this fee, that fee, and you're like, okay, well, when you get your payment, let's suppose everything sells and you get your payment and they deduct all that stuff, you realize, you might call them and say, what's happened. There's a lot of different, and it's not like they're trying to take advantage of you. It's there. I mean, buyers can't be sitting there talking to every potential vendor. Here are the fine prints, and here's like 18 of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They assume you do the homework.
Minimum.
So that, doing a lot of your homework, but I think coming down to really going back to your first question, which is how do you figure, how do we kind of like go from nothing to finding your target market and then actually going and finding your customers while being a full-time mother? Because my kids, like, I mean, I was
Yeah,
the
because if kids are a full-time job and business is more than a full-time job, and last I knew, 40 hours for one, 40 hours for the other.
right, right. Kids, so my kids basically had, me full time. So I worked around their schedule. They went to
And
school
it's
from
not like you clock out and it's over and done with. You're still on call.
yeah, 8 to 2. I picked them up at 2 o'clock. I didn't do anything. I just spent time with them. Did their homework. Did their, my kids played soccer, tennis, baseball. All the AYSO stuff, all
Oh,
that.
yeah. I was in soccer too with AYSO.
AYSO. They did the basketball, baseball. And then they later on years they did tennis, surfing out in California. Surfing is kind of big. So they did all that stuff, and I sat there with them from 2 to about 5, cooked dinner with them 5 to 6. And while they were doing their homework, I'm basically calling them, calling the Asian production companies, and I'd get them started. And by the time I put them to bed, like 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, it's their like end of the day. So whatever
Yeah.
issues they had, I can finish that up. And 2 nights a week, I was up till midnight because that's like 10 o'clock in the morning in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and
Okay.
places.
Yeah.
That's a real big business there. And because my time was so limited, I was very choosy with customers from day one. Anybody who hassled with me about, returns or just a lot of stuff, I would just politely, because I didn't need everybody's business. I only needed just a few. So I would just pick the ones that were nice to me, that were easier to deal with, that really needed me. And then, so I was able to stay sane. And then at some point, I
It's a
actually
good
got a
thing.
phone call. Yeah, I got a phone call from HSN after my products were Neiman Marcus for, for a long, long time. And they wanted me to be on their channel because that they were back in 1998. They were just beginning to be like a blossom as a company. So that's where my TV career began. But I also talk about, in my case, they called me, but today everybody wants to have their stuff on TV, and you know that's the one thing I can probably do a master class on is how to get your product on TV. Because it's interesting, when I was writing my book, my editor said, I don't understand. Like, don't you have to pay to be, don't you have to pay the TV station, or don't you have to pay ad money to get your product on TV? Well, and then that's when it kind of like clicked in my head, like, no, like what I was doing was I was getting paid to be on TV,
Right.
not the other way around. So I was, getting an opportunity to build my brand and make a ton of money
Authority
and
positioning.
yeah, and get paid to be on TV. So if you ever want to, if you have a product or
Sounds
service
better
or
than just paying
any,
for an ad.
oh, yeah, for sure, right? And so that I think is something that, but let's put it this way: there's only like, I want to say half a dozen people. I'm going to be very generous. There might be 10 people that's been on TV for 25 years in a row straight, doing a dollars per minute type of sales. I mean, I can't think of that many because when you don't do the dollars per minute, you get taken off. So I'm still on TV. It's just an amazing journey, and I think that, and the sad thing is, every TV station is desperately looking for the new it thing. So if you've got a new cream or new hair thing or new jewelry line or new way to do your asphalt or you got a new boat or anything like that, they are looking for, to discover. Every buyer
They're looking
wants
to
to,
fill that airtime.
yeah, they're looking to increase their dollars per minute. I mean, if they're only doing, let's say, $2,000 a minute or whatever, they want the next product that's going to do $10,000 a minute. They're constantly looking. And so it's just where understanding what they're looking for. Um, and and then you got to talk about, being able to go on TV actually and be succinct about it. There's a whole other art
Why don't
to,
we go a little bit deeper for the listeners, because I venture to say there's very few people, like you just said, there's 10 people who've done it as long as you, as successful, if that. But give us a behind the scenes of what it's like doing stuff TV, and you've mentioned a few times the dollars per minute. What does that mean?
yeah. So like if you're in the old days when you used to have mail order catalogs, they used to actually look at sales on a dollars per square inch, actually, you know. So your product might have like, I don't know, 4 square inches or 8 square inches. And then in case line, like in the department store, it's like, dollars per foot or something. And in on TV, the most limiting thing for them is prime time, right? You've got 24 hours a day of airtime, and 80% of that business is being done during prime time. So during prime time, you got to do so many more dollars per minute than when you're on like overnight when very few people are watching. So your products have to consistently do so many $1,000 a minute. Like every TV station has their own criteria, and
Okay.
so like a beauty
What's a
product.
range of that? You mentioned something low as 2,000 a minute and upwards of 10,000 a minute.
Well,
What's the
around the
like
world,
maximum high end, and is there even 1,000 a minute for low end?
around the world, so I mean, I don't know, there is probably 50 or 100 different TV retailers around the world. Okay, so you got the major ones in the major industrialized nations like France, Italy, England, and we have the US, and I've done business with quite a few of them. So they vary a lot, and they also vary by product. So if you are like, for example, if you're selling like Apple TV, or if you're
Okay.
selling, MacBook computers, or any kind of electronic product, is going to have a lot higher requirement for dollars per minute. than like jewelry or beauty or, the different. So even within the same network, so for example, jewelry, and I don't want to get in, lawsuits, I can't say this, but for jewelry has a much higher margin, and it ships very easily. Like it's cheaper to ship a piece of jewelry
Yeah, you're
than
not
like
shipping a microwave or a
or a
10-pound
TV.
computer or
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
or a TV that, it's 45, inches or something. So it's very low cost that way. So they actually have they have a high dollars per minute requirement, but it's not as high as like electronics. Electronics,
Okay.
because they have, their margins are low outside anyway, and they got a lot more competition, and things are heavy to ship. So they've got to do a lot more dollars per minute, but their margins are low. So at the end of the day, they might have TVs, cameras. They might have all these electronics. They might have
I remember
apparel,
the
like
camcorders when those were coming out. I'm like, oh,
and
I
GPS
need to
as well.
get one of these. And it's like, look, it's got the travel strap and this and that. But even a small one is a couple
Yeah.
of pounds plus shipping and all that.
Well, plus like they can get damaged pretty easily. But I
Mm-hmm.
mean, at the end of the day, their margin requirement for the day has been averaged out. Because, just say, let's say your, a TV station does really well with electronics. It's inconceivable to sell only electronics, because then you're going to isolate all the other customers, who might buy jewelry.
Oh, I
Because,
never thought about that. And
so
they
you
really
want
do have small margins. I remember when I was working for a large retail store that's the opposite of Bad Buy. And
yeah,
PS2 was out. It
yeah,
was
yeah,
199 and we were buying them for 198. Like
yeah. Sometimes,
197.99. There's $2 on it. They're like, you need to be selling the cords, the chips, all the other stuff because that's where the margin was.
yeah.
And they were
So,
big.
depending on the products, like if you're in like beauty, the margins are much higher, but they also have expiration dates. Like if jewelry doesn't have expiration dates. You can ship something today and it could be there for 3 years and nothing is going to sour. But if you were shipping a very organic face cream, it might have a shelf life of 2 years. So by the time, they
Yeah.
sit on, you don't want it to go to 2 years. You don't want, you want the
Or
consumer
sooner
to have,
if you're using
yeah.
natural ingredients and stuff, they could just break down like food does.
Yeah. So I think, but what the point I'm making is that basically doing your homework. So at that time in TV, prime. So I was on prime time for many, almost 20 years at HSN. It's, I guess what I'm saying to our listeners is that they're looking for the product that can do in any category. Let's say jewelry was doing in any given station, they were doing, just take a number out of my head. Like some stations will do $6,000 a minute for prime time. Some stations will do $1,000 a minute. But every station, no matter where you're doing 1,000 or 6,000, you want the next product, that's going to do the 10 grand. When I did the Times Square necklace, it was doing $43,000 a minute. Nobody's ever done those numbers before back in 1999, ever. I mean, that broke all electronic record by
And what was
far.
the coolest part of doing that? On top of
Uh,
breaking the records.
Being a part of history, I guess, because that product commemorated the welcoming of the new millennium, right? So it was a part of a celebration. So Times Square had a ball that was all sort of manual, and then it went to digital. And nobody Y2K and all that, nobody even knew it was even going to work or not. They were hoping it would be,
Is
I
that why it
remember
was manual? They were waiting until after the 2000 to switch it to digital?
they switched to digital at 2000 when it was turning 2000, right? From 1999 to 2000, New Year's 2000. Yeah, it was like a really interesting time, but uh, I think, I had no clue what I was doing back then. I mean, like I said, I was never that
I
money
would say
motivated.
you gotta give yourself credit because you're talking about the late '90s, late '80s, early '90s, mid '90s, and then '99. You get the highest rating there, and I know there's something else you did for on New Year's Eve.
Yeah,
You clearly had enough figured out. I know you're always learning, but
you are
it sounds
always
like a
learning.
great decade.
It was, and then we had the 9/11, and
Not so great.
way then. But I think even with every disaster too, you do learn, you know, how people's emotions change and how we can cope with it and help. Like it's just And like I said, I think I start my book out talking a little bit about my background only to give the reader a little bit of context about the decisions I had to make and the decisions I made and how my philosophy was shaped. And then I go into talking about how your integrity never bending. Like, so many times when I was on HSN or even a lot of the department stores, cruise lines, they'll say, I'll say something like, I need to sell it for X amount. And they'll say, right now it's selling for $149. And I really need to sell it for 99. We can do, triple the money or whatever. And yeah, I could always go a lesser grade of this or lighter gram weight something, or, there's a lot of ways where consumers can't tell right away that there's a huge change. Or maybe they know there's a huge change, but they will, be glad to get it for cheaper, right? But I never did that. I never budged on the integrity because I thought, if I'm not going to have it, if I can't wear it, I'm not going to have my customer wear it.
Yeah. You want to be proud
So,
of it 5 years
what?
from now, 10 years
Yeah,
from now, not, hey, it's real nice now. And then,
yeah. So what happened was back in after 9/11, I heard from a lot of customers saying that a lot of things, they couldn't buy stuff, for a while. They didn't want to buy anything. But what they kept saying to me was that the stuff that they bought from me lasted, right? They lasted. They still looked very stylish and timeless and elegant, and it still felt good. It still felt like brand new, and they could wear it anywhere, and they still got compliments. And so some of the companies couldn't withstand the bad sales decade, and so they went out of business. And a lot of the customers came back when they bought anything again. They went to the sure shot, which was me. So I think just having I mean, I never thought, well, if I had integrity, I'm going to have a great business 20 years from now. I never thought that. It's just like, that was just the way I was programmed, or I was just kind of stubborn about it. I guess I don't know,
yeah.
but
And I think because you're being honest and true about it is the reason it worked. Because there's people we've turned down to help them with their books and publishing and stuff because I'm very much the same way. And it's like, they just want to do it to get people. And
money,
they're like,
yeah,
if I do this, it's like a sales tactic. Like, oh, that'll increase sales 37% if we're honest with them. It's like you were contemplating not being honest with them. Like,
right.
I
I
can't
mean,
wrap my head around that. But
in my business, for example, some of the stuff that I do have some diamond accents, right? And it's selling for $200 or whatever it is, anywhere from 50 to $600 or something. And I tell my customers, look, these diamonds here, like, are accent pieces. They're not your wedding ring. Okay, they were never designed to be that. They're supposed to be accenting the center stone. So it's all full cut diamonds, and it's diamonds that I'd be proud to wear. But I'm not. It's not like the finest quality diamond that you're going to buy at Tiffany's. So I'll let them
VVS
know.
Flawless.
Yeah, I'll let them know these are accent pieces. They're good enough for me, very good enough for me to give to my mother, give it to me. So, this is what they expect, right? So, if I'm selling emeralds, a lot of emeralds have flaws, I'll tell them every emerald is going to have a flaw. But the flaw range is this to this, and I show them all 5 type of ranges so that they know that when they get it, there's going to be a little bit of. 'Cause that's the beauty of emeralds, by the way. They're not supposed to be flawless. So being as honest as you can up front, let them know what they're getting, because I'd rather them not buy it than tell them
Get
it's going to be
something they're
they buy
disappointed
it,
with.
and then they're going to return it. It doesn't do anybody any good. So I think I purposely started my book with the emotional stuff, just being steady, how to set goals, and how to. And, the other thing really great about goals too is this: when you set your goals and it's in writing. um I remember one time, it was probably 9/11 year. It was just horrible. Real estate was bad. My husband's in real estate business, and my jewelry business was like, it took a real dip, and as it should have. And I was feeling down, and my husband said, "You know what? You your goal for last year was, to do like $300,000 or something. And you did a few $1 million. And so this year, yeah, you may do nothing." But in the 5-year projection, you were well ahead of
Sure.
where you thought you were going to be, right? So sometimes it gives you a tool to look back and, like, say, hey, that was I can do this. So I think that, properly setting your goals on, because when you actually say it's like losing weight. Like if you say, I'm 100 and, I have a friend of mine who is like 175 pounds and she wants to get down to 130. Okay, well, fine. You could go and, go on a bad diet. You could do all this stuff, or you could sit there and go, you know what? just want to lose 20 pounds this year, right? Or,
Hmm.
10 pounds this year. You could
Break
sit
it
there and
up
go,
into smaller chunks.
smaller chunks, and you could say, she got it down to like having to cut out 300 calories a day or something and walk like 30 minutes a day. And yeah, some days and when you have to cut out 300 calories a day, it could be a glass of wine and a couple of chips, or it could be bread with jam in the morning, or whatever it is. But some days you're not going to be able to cut it out, and some days you might cut out 500 calories. We don't know. But at the end of the month, if you instead of losing, I don't know, 10 pounds or something, you might only lost 8 pounds.
That's
You're
still
still
not
going to be better
bad.
off. You're still going to be better off, at the end of the year, you're going to be, a hell of a lot, lighter, right?
Why do you think so many people in business get so caught up in the metrics? Because what I'm hearing a lot of is, have a solid goal, but be flexible with how you get there. Because to your point of 300 grand in the year and you do millions and then it takes a hit, you're still beating the spread. You're still ahead. Why are we as entrepreneurs so concerned with like, oh, it doesn't, I think it was Mark Victor Hansen when I had him on the show. He was talking about like they wanted to sell a certain number of books, like do
Yeah.
$100,000. They did 96 or 98. And it
Okay.
was like, no, we weren't bummed about it. We were excited. We never even thought this was possible.
Right. I think, that's why I started the emotional part of this first in the book, because that's everything to me. Your mindset is everything. It's how you handle, you have to understand who you are. You have to understand yourself and what your end goal is. If your end goal is just to make a bunch of money, that's different than for
It's very
me.
transactional.
Right. For me, it's changing my lifestyle. It's changing my life goals. It's changing generational relationships. So for me, those other things, there was whole other issues that I had to deal with. Now, um, and I stayed true to that, by the way. So, back in 2004, I decided I'm going to retire fully. This is 2024. I'm still working. So obviously that didn't work out. But in 2004, when my contract was up with the TV station, I decided I'm going to retire fully. And at that time, the vice president that was there at the time, for jewelry said, we can't have you retire. Like, we have so many customers, your business is great, margins are great. It's not easy to find a brand that's already established that already lives at our home. It's like one of our home brands. So what can we do to, why do you want to quit? You want to go to another network? And I said, no, if I ever thought about going anywhere else, I'd talk to you guys first, because I'm so grateful for everything that they've done. And plus all my customers are there. But I need to be home, and my kids are now grown, and they're going to high school, college, and this is when they can get in real trouble. And I definitely want to be there, So um, that's when they said, okay, we're going to make this worthwhile for you. We're going to really make it easy so you don't have to do your production. There's a lot of different things that we could do so that you could accomplish both goals. So, every time I prioritized my personal life, things got easier on the professional side.
Hmm.
And because they actually took off a lot of that, the production quality stuff that they took over, my business actually quadrupled after I retired, really. And so that year, for 2004 to 2008, it quadrupled. So, and it was a multi-million dollar business. So all I can say is that, the first two chapters about my book, of my book, talking about just really understanding who you are, and more importantly, understanding who your customers are, and to see if there's a real fit. Because if your customers don't value quality, if your customers don't value
Right.
all the stuff that you've gone through, right? If your customer just wants to pay cheap money and just be one and done, then you're in the wrong place. You don't need, they don't deserve, your heart and soul all the time.
100%.
So make sure that you really understand who you are, what you're willing to do, and set some boundaries. And then make sure that you then go out and make sure that your target market understands that. Because I'm telling you, like, my customers and I thank them from the beginning to the end, the beginning of the book, the end of the book, and in the acknowledgement, they are such a gift to me. Like they were a true gift and are because, I meet them at airports on a flight, like it could be flights from here to Tokyo, here to London. I mean, I meet people like all the time that have my jewelry on, or I met people in publishing industry, like publishers who actually said, "Oh my God, I wear your jewelry." So that's just been a gift that we had that 20 years time, 25 years time now. So I guess sh- short, but in long, that was a long-winded way of saying that understand your target market, understand what you're doing, and then go after it. And if you're willing to do that, I don't know of anybody who's written a book that's this comprehensive. Here's the other thing. I didn't want a book that is so comprehensive that it looks like an encyclopedia.
That's
So
awesome. I put the same thing
yeah,
in mine. I didn't want someone being out and about reading how to publish a book and someone's asking them if they're reading the yellow pages because, I mean, we could
yeah.
make it 600 pages.
But that's too much to ask from any reader in time commitment. Like I really wanted them to be able to, and just pick through it. If they want to, if you already have a business and you want to um, basically put it on TV, for example, I teach you exactly how to do that. Exactly how to do that. Yeah, and I've known plenty of brands that started that way, and they're bigger brands than mine right now. Um, and if you just want to scale your business, we're
Yeah,
going to
why
talk
don't you touch
scaling.
on scale real quick?
Yeah, a little bit. Okay, so and in the publishing business, there's all these buzzwords, right? People have buzzwords, and they've got all these like 10 steps or bullet points that everybody uses. In entrepreneurship, people talk about scaling all the time. Okay,
Yeah.
main difference between scaling and growing your business is this: like when you first start out your business, like I did. Like I started with just a few $1,000, and then I went to like a couple $100,000, and then from there to $1 million. Now, if you do a $200,000 year one, and it takes you heart and soul. Let's say you're running a restaurant, and have you and your daughter, your mother, everybody working, okay, and you make your 200 grand. Then you want to open a second location, and you then spend the 200 grand you made into the second location. And basically, because you have to shuffle back and forth, the same people are doing all the stuff. And maybe the second one is doing okay, but the one's suffering because you can't
Yeah.
be at places. So now, after you put the 200 grand, instead of making 400 grand, you are now making 270. Okay. You could sit there and go, I'm growing. I got the second location. I got additional 70 grand. Maybe I'll open the third one. Maybe I'll make, 350 next year, right?
Who's
That,
staffing it though? If you're using like
but even if you could staff it, that is what I call growing. Okay. That's just growing your business. And that, to me, if you ask me, that's a hard way to grow your business. It's destined to fail at the end. Like you're going to burn out, like you said, if you're staffing it, they don't have
yeah,
the
because
same.
with those numbers, it'd be hard to get to half a mil, let alone a mil.
Right. But let's say but scaling is different. Scaling is when first do your, let's say first, let's say you're like a dentist. You start out with your first location, and he's doing, I don't know, $5,000 a day or something. And then you learn how to do something, you figure out how to do something really good, and you come up with, a way, a new machine or a way to do something better. So the second location, you're doing 10 grand a day. So even though you spent the money, you're doing 10 grand a day. So like in my business, like when I went from doing, let's say, $10 million to $50 million a year, I actually reduced my staff because they basically took over some of the production and a lot of the responsibility. That's how I was able to move to San Diego. So they, as opposed to being in LA, I had a huge staff of warehousing, shipping, and quality control, all these people. I was able to actually, because the orders were getting too big, where I couldn't do it. I couldn't actually have enough people to manage to quality control this stuff myself. So we basically shipped that out to a company that does nothing but QC for you, and it was like 50 cents an item or something, because that's all they do. So once we jobbed that out, I didn't need the staff here, and I also didn't need the space for it,
Yeah.
either
Because
insurance
that's a
for it.
big job, and that doesn't sound like a huge investment to pull it off proper.
Right. It was just actually much less. So I was able to quadruple my money and cut the expenses. So I went from, I literally quadrupled my business, but the net income basically was more than quadruple.
So does scaling, what I'm getting is it sounds like the scaling has more to do with the efficiency and the margins than just
Well,
straight up
scaling,
going, hey, we're growing it. We just started, you know.
right. Scaling is using fewer resources, less money to grow faster. That's what scaling actually means. So, for example, let's say
That's actually
you
the
came
fun
up,
part, finding the inefficiencies.
right. So let's say you came up with a way to, make shoes. Okay. And, you were doing your own production, you got your own engineers, you got your own buyer for leather, you got all this stuff, and then you were selling it to some department stores doing all this stuff. And you're having to explain to everybody who you are, how your leather is better than everybody else's, and on and on and on. And you do this forever. And here's another thing. Let's say you built a brand. Let's say you're a Gucci, okay? Well, Gucci can come up with vinyl shoes that they don't have to have any leather, right? Because people come and knock on the door because they have a brand name. So they don't have to go and tell everybody, who they are. They don't have to, I mean, people basically come and looking for it, and they're willing to pay 10 times the price for the same shoe. I mean, if I came up with a vinyl shoe, I'm going to have a tough time selling it for $20. I might have to give it away for free. I might have to ask, but to pay you $20 to see if your foot hurts, right? So part of the way you can scale it is coming up with a brand, building a brand from the get-go. A lot of people don't understand building a business is a whole different thing than building a brand. So
Yeah.
if you're running a store, like the shoe store, if you sit there and you don't have a brand and nobody knows who you are, and you're just doing a functional orthopedic shoe or whatever shoe that you happen to be selling, and you come up with the way and you say, it's costing me between the engineers and this and that, it's costing me $1 million, maybe $100,000 a year to make all the stuff, and I can make 10 grand or 20 grand. Or at some point, you might even make, you spend 100, you might make 50 grand. Okay. That's building a business. You make a little bit more money than what it cost you. But if you build a brand, you could get there and go, you know what, here is so-and-so brand, and, it's costing me 100 grand, and I can make $500,000 with that. That's a brand. So how do you then build a brand? What is a brand? What does it stand for? And, with no money, because, if I had unlimited amount of money, like an Estee Lauder or, a GM, I could build a brand. I mean, even then it's hard because you got to really advertise all that stuff.
Yeah,
But
and
there,
where do you start with it, and when do you start with it? Because I've heard so many people, even when I'm giving presentations to the audience, and they're like, "Well, you ask them, and they're like, "Well, I just got started, or I've been in business 10 years. I want to build a brand," and
right,
it's like, "Well, why?" If you don't
right,
I feel like if you don't have a product line, if you aren't really truly the best at what you do, you need to work on your craft and systems and all kinds of stuff before you
yeah.
try to do anything else. I mean, what does your company stand for? What does the brand stand for? If you don't know it, how do you convey that?
Right. So I think that's another thing that a lot of entrepreneurs don't understand is like, if you want to build a brand, I mean, if you think about it and you go, I mean, all of you who are listening right now, you could sit there and go, you know what? That's a really good idea. I should be building a brand, right? And you think to yourself, okay, that woman knows what she's talking about. I should go tomorrow morning and build a brand. I could figure out how to build a brand. And when you build a brand and you go, what does my brand stand for? And how does this compete with everybody else on the market? How does it solve anybody's problems? Um, and what would it take for me to build a brand? When you start looking at it that way, when you start actually looking at what it would take to do, that's when you realize I really need this, or I should have been doing that. Because, like you said, a brand has to stand for something. And in the end, as an entrepreneur, and I should have started this whole interview with this philosophy, which is as an entrepreneur, as you know, the only way you make money long term, you can make money short term, but only way you make money in long term is if you change somebody else's life for the better, if you add value to somebody else's life for the better, right? If I sold you a pair of shoes and let's say I sold Gucci shoes and, it gave you status, it makes you feel good. You can close a deal because a lot of people think you're rich or, whatever. Or if I sold you orthopedic shoes that actually helps you feel better and, helps prevent injuries, whatever it is. If I sold you security systems, it helps you prevent a robbery or gives you a lot of comfort. Whatever it is, you have to add some value to somebody else's life long term. So then when you're building a brand, you have to figure out, okay, why is my brand here? What problems am I solving
And
or
for who? Here's
for
what we
who?
do. Here's what it's the
Yeah.
greatest product since
So,
sliced bread, but you don't know the market
right. So
or
I
have
think
a compelling enough offer.
yeah. So I go extensively into how to build a brand when you're a small company with no money, because I've done it. And you can build your brand. I mean, I think I advertise like, I want to say I've tried it. And in those days, money wasn't, you didn't spend the kind of money you do today. But in the 35 years I've been in business, my total ad budget was probably less than $10,000. And at the peak of my career, I did over 50 million bucks a year. So think about that.
That
You
sounds
can
like a
build,
pretty good ROI.
it's a very good ROI.
Now, you wouldn't be upset if the growth and the numbers worked out to 9,982% growth. You're not going to get bent out of shape. It wasn't 10,000, would you?
Am I? I'm just kidding. No, but I think, I mean, being an entrepreneur, we, all of you who are listening, if you're an entrepreneur, you're probably as crazy as I am. I mean, there are the definition of a business difference between a business person and an entrepreneur, I've been told, is that entrepreneurs take more risks, right?
I can see that.
So we, take our risks. We, put our hearts and soul into everything. And I'm telling you that because I didn't have a mentor, I didn't have any connections with anybody. All I had was, hope and guts and grit and desperation, basically, and some common sense that I've had to learn all this on my own by trial and error. And I'm going to say to you, I've been very privileged to, and I think I've been very lucky. I mean, I'm not going to ever discount that. I kind of hit the jackpot, whether that's divine intervention or just pure luck, I don't know. But I will tell you that I've traveled all over the world. I've traveled all over Middle East, all of the Americas, all of Asia, um, most of Europe, and I've sold to places many people can't even name. I mean, my products are sold in 75 different countries, and it's not, that's why I said some of that is luck. That with every customer, I mean, when I flew out to Middle East, and everybody was just like floored because they're like, it was like right when the Middle East tensions were so high, they were just floored that I just showed up there by myself, a female Asian woman, like a short little girl by myself, trying to learn the market, and all that.
And American, how dare you?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, all my Middle Eastern friends are like, "You sure you want to go over there, right now?" Because the front pages were just all full of like, so I said, yeah, I want to, I have faith and I want to know my market. I want to meet the people in person and I want to, like really invest my time and understand what they want, like understand what the customers there want from me. So I think that, I've been to everything I wrote in my book is something I have experienced that myself that you're never going to find in Google. You're never going to find it in somebody else's book. You're not, and it's going to work. That's the other thing. I mean, it's going to work. I've done 9-figure business. I mean, when I wrote the book, as you know, it took me 3 years to publish it. But when I wrote the book, it was, over $500 million. But today that number has grown quite a bit. So, it's going to be a really short time before I hit the $1 billion mark. So I think that, you know, coming, with no money, never got a loan for my business or anything else. I've always lived below my means. And this, and I'm not going to say this to other people, but this, Mario, that always still remain very humble. I'm always open to learning and listening,
100%.
and every day is a school day. And it's it's a great
Yeah, you've
life.
always been super down to earth. That's why when I was doing your intro, I'm like, I know this isn't even covering everything. You didn't even mention the New York ball, the ball you designed, below deck. I know there's stuff even I don't know, and it's just, but that you're not like, you're not about that. You really truly have that heart, and I think that's what resonated when we got connected. I was like, you're just cool.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I mean, I don't know. I've done a lot of so many things I've done. I was thinking about this the other day. It's not in my book. The Times Square necklace is not in my book. I did the jewelry for the Oscars, like when they did the Empire event. That was like the first AIDS charity that raised money. I did all jewelry for it was like Vogue, Christie's, and Oscars. Like they had a huge auction that year, and I forgot to mention it in the book too. So it's just a lot of things. Like
Second edition or second book?
no, I think this book is pretty comprehensive. I think listen, if you ever wanted to start your own, especially the creatives, because if you are a creative, they think that you don't have a brain or it's a tough road, or many of you, like I was, very creative my whole life, and I paint, I play the piano, I do all that. But my parents made me go to, get an MBA in finance of all things, and yeah, I got that's the best example. I got straight A's. I actually got a scholarship, a fine school. But if I had to manage money for a company, that company would be bankrupt like in 10 days. Trust me, like I'm horrible at it. If I had to be like, if I was in a government job, this country would be bankrupt. So I think that if you're in a creative business, creative world, you might be an inventor, you might be a painter, you might be a gardener, you might be a landscape architect, or you might be a chef. You might be, a carpenter. In fact, I have an example of a carpenter and somebody who like wanted to open a restaurant that they test marketed everything and got their customers without ever opening their first, before they got their first store, before they got their first location.
Oh, no kidding.
Well, yeah, there's all these different ways you can test market and get your business down pat before you start advertising or getting a location. Because hey, you can be to get a location, you might realize like you should have opened at, another town next door or
Yeah.
whatever. You're stuck in a 5-year lease. Why?
Because when you're dealing with the physical brick and mortars, it's about the foot traffic coming through there too.
Right. But also, like if you're a carpenter but in a brand new town, how do you, let people know you're there? Right. There's a lot of different ways you get PR, because I was always very scrappy when it comes to getting PR.
I was just
And
thinking, I was going to make a joke about guerrilla marketing. And when you said if you're in a new town, I'm like, well, you could hand out stuff on the street corner when people are stuck at the red light, or just hammer a tin trash can and let people know and hand out business cards. But the reality is some of that stuff's more effective than, do $1 million ad campaign, plan it out. You're talking to the wrong people and it hits 0.1%. I mean,
yeah, I got in the book, there is an example of a carpenter who really, truly is very talented, like carves, not just like, I mean, amazing. And he came to a new town because basically his family moved, and he had a broken relationship or something, and he needed to move. Came to a whole new town where nobody knew him. And then when he wanted to start his business, basically he ended up, starting from scratch. And I think within a couple of years, he's now doing these multi, 10, $20 million homes. And, just like he today has like 26 people employed doing that. So, I mean, just a lot of different ways. You got to think outside the box a little bit. I just tell people, you know what? If you start your business with 50 grand, you don't really start thinking until you lose the 50,
right.
until you're down to nothing, and then when you finally get a second chance, and, your mom or whoever says, don't give up, don't give up, you're almost there, and you're hanging on, you're like, you're just waiting for that next mistake for you to shut that down emotionally. That's how people think. So I
That's
just
the
tell
point
people.
where you're going to succeed no matter what, or you're going to give up on it.
So, I mean, especially for those people who are creative, um, this book is definitely for you, because I understand how creative people think, and I understand Because even now, after 25 years of straight every month being on TV on $1 per minute, where you're being judged by that. And I think I shared this with you before. Like when I go on TV again, like next month I'll be on for like 9 hours or something. Every minute I'm on, I'm nervous because even after all these years, because when you've had ups and downs,
Wow.
you're an entrepreneur, you never think, like I always think, oh my gosh, what if like they hate this collection? What if I totally misread the market? Or what if this turns out to be a total dog? Like what if it completely like fails or something? Like, you think about that, these doubts kind of seep in because that's our nature to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And so I talk a lot about, how to hang on to that hope. And when a hope is just pie in the sky and you being stubborn, or when a hope is actually validated with your skill set and patience.
Yeah, and
That's
putting in the work behind it. A it's more of a timing thing. It's not will it happen, it's just a matter of when. Like I'm doing everything that's required.
right, right. And it's not an overnight thing. And I don't want to, you know, let anyone think that you buy the book and you're going to be a millionaire. But I do think that if you're willing to work at it and you follow, it's just really common
You
sense.
at least have
A
a
lot.
game plan that I remember when I started, it was like there's no rhyme or reason. There was one
Right.
year, my whole game plan that no one gave me, it just was logic. I think 2008, I didn't get the result I wanted the last year. I'm going to do literally the opposite of everything. Now,
Yeah.
that made me take more risks, but some of
Yeah.
the stuff that was working, I didn't really have the foresight to go, maybe you don't change that. I wasn't cherry picking. I literally just did opposite of everything. If I said no to this event, I said yes to it. You know what I mean? And it just changed up the variables. You got to do something. You can't play it safe like that. And it's interesting. I'm a little surprised about the TV comment you just made because I thought that a couple hundred episodes ago because, I have so many of the show now that I used to get nervous and everything. And I'm like, why am I still, even before you got on,
I know I
I've
said
known
that.
you.
Yeah.
I know what
Yeah.
I'm doing. And I just like was like, but you know what? It means we still care.
We
When
do.
you
And
when
I
you don't
think,
get
yeah.
that nervousness, it's like, whatever happens, happens. And it's like, that's not usually the best quality. Or
Yeah,
you're
I
at least
think,
going through the motions or something. Even if it doesn't
yeah.
completely blow up, it's just going to be flat.
I care. Like I care, and I think that being nervous. And I know a lot of people who've been on TV for like 2 years that are about to get off, and I know that they'll be about to get off, like just by looking at it, that they have all the confidence in the world. I don't know why. Um,
Do you
when
think
somebody
some
was,
of it is a degree of acting? Like it's just they know how, I mean, like literally actors who can go, this isn't my personality, but I literally become someone else. Do you think they're just putting on like too much of a show that is a drain on them, even though they can pull it off flawlessly?
they could, but I think one thing I did learn though, and one of the reasons why I think my brand took off the way it did on TV is that our any customer can see authenticity or somebody who's not authentic
Yeah, you
acting.
don't want to
They
be
can
disingenuous.
so quickly. Yeah. So you just can't fake that. When you're on live TV, if you're not authentic, they can see it. And, I don't know. When I was in HSN, I think I was across like every movie star there is, selling jewelry. I mean, look, I'm not gonna sit there and say, I'm gonna be on the next movie and I can act just as good as they do because I'm not an actor. I can tell you, I'm gonna suck if I ever got a part in anything. Even a one-liner, I would suck. So why would some of them think that they could just, design jewelry, wake up in the morning and just design jewelry because
Right.
they wore a few, designed by someone
Live
else.
is different than pre-recorded too. It's one of the reasons, truthfully, I decided to do live from day one
Yeah.
because people show up differently, if nothing else.
Right. So I think that, authenticity is key. And I think in my book, I do talk about that. I talk about using your authenticity to build your brand because by now, all of you who are listening probably understand the brand a little bit without ever looking at it, just by listening to me talk, you probably will, if you Google search my jewelry, you'll find that it's not flashy. It's
That's
very
pretty.
high quality, timeless, elegant, respectful, always a little bit of discipline. Even when things are big and bold, they're still very disciplined. That's my personality through and through, and I like things that kind of are, I love working with nature, like florals and, little critters, because they've been here like a billion years before us. So I want to say that, if you're not authentic, you're not gonna make it. That I'm going to tell you right now. I mean, you don't have to buy the book. I'll tell you that right now. But if you want to build something, and one thing, many of you might have great ideas. Maybe you were stuck at a job like I was, or maybe you want to spend more time. Your job is paying you really well, and all that, but you're spending a lot more time at work than you want to. A lot of companies talk about work-life balance, and you find out it's more work and there's no life. In most of these companies, that the more they talk about it, you find that the more
That's
they
funny.
talk
I've
about
never heard that. The work-life
it. It's true
balance.
when they
There's
talk
more
about
work
work-life
and less
balance.
life.
Yeah, there's more work and there's very little life. So when you're in that position, you go, you know what? It all sounds good, but how do I get started? How do I get started? And what do I do? In the meantime, I got to pay rent, whatever. I deal with all that in the book, and how I dealt with that. And so, it's worth a try. So if you do try to buy the book, you can buy it on Amazon or where, all the bookstores, but just leave me a review. It doesn't have to be a good review. Just be an honest review. I don't ask anybody to write me a five
Authenticity, huh?
honest review. You can sit there and say, this is too verbose, or, I found this chapter sucks, or whatever. I don't care. Just write me a review so I can actually get better. That's all I ask.
It's a pretty good ask. I recommend getting reviews and everything, and it's fun. I mean, one of my favorite things to do is just go onto YouTube and Amazon and just read or watch whatever, and you get the truth from people. There's no
Yeah,
marketing
yeah.
team, no nothing. The people are like, do they really think this video is good? Like that's what they're
Right.
thinking. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you. We got time for the wheel of whatever before we thank the sponsor and come back for the imperfect action round. Would you like yellow or black? I have a feeling you're going to say pastel, but you do have to pick one of these.
Those are pretty harsh choices. I'm gonna go with
I have to
black.
stay on brand too, but um,
I'll go with black because when in doubt, I go with black for
looks
clothes.
good. Okay, black. Let's see what question you get. Ooh, that's a good one right there.
Hey, what is it?
So my question for you is, outside of all the success of business and everything, what type of movies do you like to enjoy, and what do you do in your downtime?
Okay, so movies. My favorite movie of all time is The Godfather, I would say.
Can't go
It's,
wrong with
what it
Italian.
is.
That's what I like to say.
Yeah, I love it because everybody in the movie is so imperfect. And yet you really like fall in love with the bad guy at the end. Michael Corleone is like, he kind of tries to go straight, but he doesn't. He ends up with this business where, and the music is fabulous and all the scenery, I mean, the music from Godfather, you can't like, it's just amazing. It's one of my favorite soundtracks. So I like that. And it's classic, there's a romance story. There's a lot of human like survival. I mean, I don't condone what they're doing and everything, but I love that. Yeah. So, and
Well,
then what I do in my downtime, you can't see it, but I've got a grand piano here. I play the piano. I paint pretty actively, and I spend time with my grandkids and my mom. As she's
of
getting older,
course,
so I want to make up the time I didn't have with her when I was growing up.
great balance.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, what is your grand piano? Yamaha, Steinway?
No, it's not one of those famous brands. I'd have to look at it. I
Okay,
bought it some time ago. It's not, it's a baby grand. And I bought it
nice.
when we were, I mean, long time ago, 20 years ago. I will tell you, I have, now I've reached some amount of success and I do live in a nice home. And,
Yes, some.
but I have people come here and they think, oh my God, it's such a beautiful home, whatever. They don't realize a lot of the furniture, not a lot, there are a few pieces of furniture that are strewn through here at my home that I bought like for $20, way back when. I mean, literally, I have a round table with some candles on it still. I should actually post that on Instagram. That they're just like pressed boards, like a circle pressed board with like legs that are on it. Like before you paint it, it's just like pressed board. Like it's actually kind of like now, not even flat after all these years. So when my husband and I first got married, we didn't have any money, and I went to like what we consider like a lumber yard, and it was already cut there, and I bought it. And so what I did was we couldn't afford like a table, so I bought it, and I went to the like a fabric store. We used to have a lot of fabric stores
Okay.
back there. And I would buy the yardage that was left over and I sewed it a table cover. And so, what's underneath, nobody knows. And when we moved here to this house, which is, a much nicer house than I've ever owned, um, the furniture mover was like, "You sure you want to take this thing?" And I said, "Yeah, I do."
There's more meaning to
That
that than anything
reminds me,
else.
yeah, reminding me of how I got started. And I have, a few other pieces. I've got a old TV that like I think if I turn it on right now, it would just have black and white snow on it now.
This
But
is so surreal. I have
yeah,
a TV I bought in high school still because it's a JVC flat screen, and I still have stuff that is from years ago as well. The
mine's
reason I was
ex-
asking mainly about the piano, I play piano, alto, and tenor sax also, and um, it's not a famous grand piano either, but it's what Dad and I used to play, and it's from it's in the family and everything. So I'm always going to have it.
it's my TV was Zenith, I think. It's a really it
I
looks like a
remember
little
Zenith.
it's like a little bubble. And I bought it used. And I think my piano is Schaefer, something like that. But anyway,
Okay,
it wasn't a famous brand or anything like that. And I
mine's
have,
Wurlitzer.
yeah, pieces of furniture around my home. I still have them because I know it's there. And when my daughter got married and my son-in-law comes in, and I think they've been married for like 5 years. And I think the other day he kind of ran into one of them. And I told him the history behind that particular piece. It's like, oh my God, that's so nice that you have that. Like you have that history. So, I want to get it one day, So, yeah, so I think you just got to be grounded and, I think this whole reason why I'm on this podcast now, number one, other than your charming personality, Mario, and how great this podcast is being produced. I told you I complimented you before we were on live, is to give everybody the idea that if you have something that you think you can help other people with, and you really focus on it, you under just a few little steps, you could impact the world in a way that you can't even imagine. If you think about how our lives today have changed from my parents' generation, like today we've got Google, Apple, Facebook, all the social media.
Yep.
You look at all those companies right now. You look at how Facebook got started, Apple got started. You know, most of these companies, except Amazon, was started by people who are dropouts from school. With less than $5,000. Think about that.
Yeah.
So, Steve Jobs. I mean, if you saw the story, I don't think he even spent $2,000. I mean, he didn't even. He went to college and just like didn't pay tuition. He just kind of like sat in classes, learned. So I'm just saying that you could be sitting on a dream business that could literally change how people live and communicate. And, just start somewhere because it's got to be, if you're not working on your dream right now and you're working at somebody else's company, you're working on their dream for some little money. And if that's your thing, go for it. But no, it wasn't my
I don't
thing.
want to say unacceptable, but maybe not encouraged.
Yeah, for me, so for those of you who are hoping to that this is an amazing, I mean, we just got through talking about making money on $1 per minute, and it's pretty significant. In my case, it's very significant. So writing a book is a real money losing proposition. Um, but I didn't do it for the money. I did it to help people. So,
And
you know,
and that without a doubt comes through.
thank you. Thank you.
Let me ask you this, a couple last things. What books have helped you the most in your business journey?
Oh, there's been so many. I want to say well, one book that I really like a lot for those of you who are starting out now, is a book called Tipping Point. I don't know if you've
Oh yeah,
I love that book because it talks about how you build your business until that tipping point, and then everything is becomes easier. Um,
it
the
is
Good
more
to
fun on that side of it.
Yeah, The Good to Great is another book that I love. It's about how when things are good, like you're making 100 grand a year, or you're making 200 grand a year at a company, um, you don't think about greatness because things are good. Like schools in a lot of schools in America are failing, but because it's better than some countries or other places, we don't ever fix it. We
Yeah.
don't ever think about how great it could be, right? So, and I think it's good because and it talks about real life companies that actually were good and then they actually ended up going bankrupt because they didn't think about great. And so, it goes, and then it also goes to the companies that actually, even though things were good, the founders kind of, or whoever changed it, thought that things were gonna go bad at some point, and so they took drastic action and made it great in many cases. So, I love books like that. And I read all the time. I like this year I was looking at my Amazon account about all the books I bought. I think this year, and this is February, I read already like 30 books.
Oh wow,
I read a week or something, and I read a lot of books. I'd say I read about 50 to 70 books a year,
jeez,
more than one
that's
book
a
a
lot. And I'm a
Mhm.
publisher.
Yeah,
That's a lot. I got to ask you, I'm just throwing this one in here. Book or audiobook?
it depends on the book, right? So I would say for business books, I prefer audio,
Okay.
but because sometimes it's easy. I mean, it's hard for me to like sit and like read a book, with grandkids running around, whatever. So if I'm driving or, to see my mom, or even when I'm at night, everybody's asleep and I don't want to have the light on, I still listen. And I've had books that I listened and then I still went out and bought the book to go back and, look at the charts and things like that.
Yeah.
But if it's a fiction, I prefer having the book there, like because I tend to read those when I'm on vacation or when I'm in the backyard, by the pool. I don't want to have a device on me. So it
Yeah,
just
I'm the same way. I prefer the book as I call it, but also follow along with the audiobook because you can still highlight and do different things. But yeah, sometimes it's nice to just get away from all the lights, camera, action and just go, a tree, a bench, the boat.
right.
That's it.
Yeah.
Physical
So,
book. Well, thank you for that. Where would you like people to learn more?
yeah, go to I guess the best thing to do is go to Amazon.com and look at A Million Dollar Passion. And like I said, if you read it, please go ahead and write a review. And you can also go to victoriawieck.com, and you'll read about this book. And I actually wrote a science fiction as well, and then all my jewelry and my background, other stuff. And if you want to have questions about anything that you and I discussed here, they can just click on contact me and write me an email, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Excellent. Well, I'll make sure that's on eainterviews.com for your show notes. But thank you so much, Victoria. It's been an absolute pleasure as always.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. And thank you, Mario, for inviting me to your amazing show.
All right, Expert Authority World, we have another great episode here today. I'll see you on the next one. Have a great day, and God bless. You're already the expert, but have you transformed your expertise into a tangible asset that will generate qualified leads while increasing profit for you 24/7? And if so, how well are you promoting it? With my new book, The Expert Authority Effect Publishing Method, I take you through my process step by step. Visit eapublishingmethodbook.com today to learn the 7 steps to publish and promote your nonfiction lead and profit-generating business book in 8 weeks. Visit eapublishingmethodbook.com to get started now. Once again, that's eapublishingmethodbook.com. Thanks for listening to today's episode. I would love to know what you enjoyed most from it. If you haven't done so already, I invite you to connect with me on my new LinkedIn. You can go to it directly at eainterviews.com/LinkedIn. Once again, that's eainterviews.com/LinkedIn. Lastly, check out the full eainterviews.com site for complete show notes, the full interview video experience, links to the resources we mentioned, and more. Have a blessed day, and I'll see you on the next one.